Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of Coconut Chats. It's Harita here, and today I'm joined with Chris. How are you, Chris?
Hey Harita, hello everyone. I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Good, thanks. Today's guest is someone that I think me, Chris, and quite a few of our listeners can relate to quite well, being a Western-born Indian female living in the 21st century. If you're a fan of the Mammamia podcast, which are a group of ladies that run a podcast from Sydney, you may have heard of Emily Vernem. She's a co-host of a fairly new podcast called The Undone, where she and her flatmate Lucy Neville, who are both in their early to mid-20s, talk about all the random things they go through in life. Welcome, Emily. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you so much for having me on.
It's awesome. I have to say, you and Lucy really cracked me up. You only started your podcast in November, as far as I can remember,
Yes.
but I think I can relate to almost everything both of you have talked about. And I mean, I'm in my early 30s now, but it reminds me of myself like 5 to 10 years ago. And I absolutely love how a fellow brown girl can talk so openly about everything.
Yeah.
So,
Oh, sorry.
oh no, you go.
No, I was going to say that I did feel really empowered talking about all these things I have been talking about on the podcast. I don't think we have enough brown women, especially in Western media. So thank you for saying that. It means a lot.
Definitely. So basically, Chris and I will ask you a bunch of questions and feel free to answer however you want to them.
Sure.
First things first, what actually led you to podcasting and what was your inspiration behind it?
Well, I think nothing really led me into podcasting. I feel like I kind of fell into it and kind of shifted my way in the whole media landscape towards podcasting. I was really interested in social media when I was a younger person, and I was recruited by Mammamia to be a social media assistant. And that is when I felt like kind of fell in love with the whole world of podcasting. Mammamia is the largest women's podcast network in the world, and to see like so many empowered, amazing women be a voice for other women just made me feel so inspired. And I just feel like the one thing that was missing was I wasn't able to directly relate to any content that I could find in the podcast world. There was just that gap missing for podcasts talking about what it's really like to be in your 20s, not just about interviews or understanding pop culture or deciphering messages from like an ex-boyfriend, but just like the raw, candid conversations that you just have with your girlfriends over dinner. I feel like that was missing.
Yeah, I get that. I guess because I know the beginning of your podcast, like you start with something like navigating life without a GPS or something like that. And
Yes.
it's so true. Like, we're in our 20s, like, you're fresh out of college or university or whatever, and then you're just like, oh, how do you tackle the things that you come across in daily life? And there's no rule book for being in your 20s. So it's like I find that one blurb you have at the beginning of every episode is like so true to what we all go through.
Yeah, I agree. I think also what Lucy and I try really hard to is not kind of be the spokesperson for all 20-year-olds. It's more just us just rawly talking about our lives and how we fail as well, and we just need to laugh at ourselves sometimes, and it doesn't always have to feel preachy. Like you shouldn't always have to learn something from a podcast. Sometimes you just need to hear someone who has the same stories as you.
Yeah.
Great. I think Emily, you've already answered part of my next question, but I'm still going to ask it to you because I'm curious to know what you feel about being a 24-year-old in the 21st century. How do things come to you, and how do you take them, and how do you perceive things around yourself?
Oh, that's such a big question. I feel like being a 24-year-old in the 21st century is just very difficult. I feel like it's even more difficult being a brown girl in the 21st century and navigating the Western world as well. I just feel like we go through kind of double what white women living in Australia go through. I also think that being 24, you're kind of forced into all these different directions, and you would never see the same 20-year-old. You would always see someone who's either doing their master's degree, someone who's still looking for a job, someone who's struggling to pay rent, someone who's really well off and doing well. And I think it's important to, especially women, I think it's important to navigate that all 24-year-old women, all women in their 20s are just kind of on their own path, which is also something we talk on the podcast. It's really hard to not compare paths with another 20-something-year-old. And I think what we especially try to do is to just let the girls who listen to us and follow us, that Lucy and I are still so different, even though we're close. We live together, we on the same podcast together, we work together, with the same age, but it's so important to develop your own path, whether that be in love or career or family, and just kind of stay in your lane and just focus on yourself.
So do you really think that life takes a rat race form of version when you're like in your early 20s or when you reach 23? Do you think that life has started running for you already?
I really don't know. I kind of hope not. I try not to think too much about that because I feel like it's so easy to settle. And I think as humans, we always, it's like that saying, like, you don't know you're in the good old days until you're in them. And I think it's hard. We're always just trying to see how we can be better and how we can do better and what our next chapter in life will be. And we kind of forget to live in the little moments, whether that be good or bad. Like if you're going through a heartbreak or if you're struggling with a job, these are like the moments that you're going to look back in 5 years and just laugh and think about. So I'm not really sure. I try to just kind of live in the moment and not really think about, am I succeeding right now? Was I succeeding back then? Will I be better? Because I'm just enjoying right now.
Yeah.
I'll leave the next question to Harita.
Yeah. So one of the topics I really thought was quite funny, but also very true and something a lot of people in their 20s could relate to was one episode, or sort of been a few episodes ago now, where you talked about like 4 or 5 different people you were dating within 1 week, and in that episode you were like kind of trying to talk about which one you liked the most, and then but still keeping your options open. And I just thought, oh, there's so many people in their 20s who are single, or like in that dating scene, what they probably go through. And it's funny because a lot of people don't talk about it openly because they're like, oh, I don't want to ruin my chances and all this and that. So I guess, what's your experience with millennial dating and dating like in the year 2020 and 2021? What's your experience of it?
My experience with dating in especially 2020 during a pandemic was very, very odd. A lot of highs and a lot of lows. I think overall, I've really enjoyed the whole dating process. It's been fun. It is getting to a point though where it's hard to decipher whether I'm doing it for myself or whether I'm doing it for other people, because I kind of turned myself into a bit of a spectacle with dating. A lot of people are just like waiting for me to go on the next one and hearing the stories. But I just kind of see it now, which I never did before. I just see it as a way to just get out there and meet new people. I try not to put too much intention behind it and just go for fun. And I think when you have a very light perspective on dating, it becomes so much easier. It becomes way more fun, way more easy. You meet so many great people who I'm still friends with till this day. And it's also a nice story to tell other girls and encourage them to go on dating. So I've gotten so many messages from women who have been inspired by the podcast to start dating or go on dates. But I do want to say that I wouldn't be in a place to date if I wasn't comfortable in myself. I think when you're comfortable in yourself, it really shows when you're dating. And when you're just kind of dating for the sake to find another person because that you think will fill a void, you can so tell. And especially women who have just moved out of home or are single for the first time in a really long time, I always tell them you just need to really work on yourself. In your 20s, you just need to explore everything and figure out what kind of person you are and what kind of person you want to be. And then things like dating, even work, will be so much easier.
And I think like what I can tell from your podcast, especially in that episode where you talked about your dating experience, I could tell that you were happy with yourself, because someone that's probably not very confident or happy with themselves is not going to talk about their dates on a podcast.
Definitely not.
And I could tell that, you're confident and you had the ability to just laugh off the funny dates, or the dates where
Yeah.
you knew nothing's ever going to eventuate from it, where someone that's probably not very self-confident or happy with themselves is not going to just take things lightly that way. So yeah, you're so right that when you're happy with yourself, then everything else can just kind of fall in place. But then if it doesn't work out, you just know how to laugh it off and move on.
Yeah.
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 Has this ever happened to you, Emily, that you were just taking a date for all the experiences it had to offer to you? You were like, happy high mode, but the other person got really serious, and then you had to face a very tactical situation in order to kind of, calm the person down. Has that ever happened to you?
It's happened to me a few times. I'm lucky where I can really read what a person's intentions are from the first date. So I've only ever had to kind of deal with those feelings after the initial meeting of them. But it is important to remember that although dating is fun and it provides fun like content and fun like stories for your friends, you have to remember that a person's feelings are involved, whether that be the person you're seeing or your own feelings. You could go on so many dates and it'd still be like painful for someone, and you can still get your heart broken. And I think also being raw in that aspect of dating, that you do go through these little heartbreaks constantly, is so important as well.
Exactly. I know. All right, Emily, thank you for that revelation. And this brings me to the last question of our conversation. So, how do you see yourself progressing in the next 10 years?
Wow, that's such a big question. I really see myself progressing as still kind of being the storyteller with my own life, and just making sure that I'm constantly being candid and raw with my experiences. Because what I've learned is that although everyone's different, we all have shared experiences. And I don't think there are enough women out there who feel confident enough to share that experience with other women to make other people feel better about their own lives and situations. So in 10 years, I'd still love to be what I'm doing, maybe on a bigger scale, and just making sure that everyone feels included, especially women of color, that we feel like that living in a Western world, we always get pushed to the back.
Yep.
And I think it's important to show people of color that we deserve to be in the front row. We deserve to have our stories shared and told, because we just have such a different experience to what white Australian media is used to.
So thank you for that, Emily. And moving on to Harita now.
Yeah, that's really well put. I think in a lot of ways, like Chris and I can relate to that as well. I'm a New Zealand born Indian, and Chris was born in India and moved to Melbourne like within the last 10 years. So we both also kind of know what it feels like to be a brown person living in a mostly white country, and how things are all a little bit different for you. And as well as navigating that Western country you're living in, you have to try and fit that cultural balance, and like not always become too Western, but then don't stay too close to the country you're from. And yeah, it's like you just have
it's crazy. It's like working out that intersectionality.
Yeah, like spaghetti, and you have to try and sort it out so it works out for everyone pretty much.
So true.
Yeah, so thank you so much for coming on board for this episode. To all our listeners out there, if you haven't heard of the Mammamia podcast, then check it out on Apple Podcasts or wherever you find your podcasts. So the Undone is part of the Mammamia branch, and they have their own podcast, which is actually called The Undone. So you can search it wherever you find your podcasts, and you'll have a good laugh, but you'll also learn a lot about life, I think. Like some of the examples you've used is like how the two of you didn't know how to cook and you were using an air fryer. And I could just think, oh, yep, this was definitely me in my 20s as well. And it's just so refreshing to hear someone actually openly talk about what they go through, rather than just acting like, oh no, I can't talk about this because it's embarrassing, or, you know, it's
Yeah.
funny but very truthful at the same time, and really good to hear that. Emily, I know you're a really busy person, so it actually means a lot to us that you've come on board for this interview. And we
Of
wish
course, I love this.
Oh, thank you. We wish you all the best with your podcast and many more podcasts to come in the future, and all the best with your job at Mammamia.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me, and good luck with the podcast. Is this season 2?
Yes, it is season 2.
Oh, how exciting. How exciting. Can't wait to listen.
Yeah. So to all our audience, we hope you enjoyed today's podcast. As always, if you like what you hear, make sure that you like, follow, and share our podcast on Facebook and YouTube. You just have to search Coconut Chats on either website. If you would like to contact us, please message us on our Facebook chat or email us at coconutchats@gmail.com, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. See you all next time.
Bye.